ULTIMA goes to Tokyo Ghoul, T. Tigres x Tokyo Ghoul, by Veldanava-God. Chapter 21. Cochlea Invasion. The dimly lit corridors of Cochlea reverberated with the sound of clanging alarms as red warning lights flickered ominously. The CCG had mobilized their forces in the 11th Ward, leaving the underground Ghoul detention facility sparsely protected. It was the perfect opportunity, and Aogiri Tree would not waste it. Tatara led the charge, his imposing presence at the forefront of the invasion. Ito, the enigmatic and ever-smirking one-eyed owl, walked beside him with an air of excitement. ULTIMA and CARRERA flanked them, their Kakuja-enhanced forms radiating an aura of pure menace. Behind them, a squadron of lower-ranking Aogiri operatives followed, eager to wreak havoc and liberate their imprisoned comrades. "We move quickly," Tatara instructed, his voice sharp and authoritative. "The moment we secure our targets, we withdraw. We cannot risk a prolonged battle against the special class investigators." CARRERA scoffed, cracking her knuckles. "TCH. You worry too much, Tatara. Let them come, I've been itching for a good fight." "Control yourself," ULTIMA chided, though her golden eyes gleamed with anticipation. "This is a mission, not a slaughter." Ito chuckled, casting them both a knowing glance. "Oh, but a little slaughter is always fun, isn't it? Besides, the prison guards will hardly put up a fight." As they stormed the main entrance, a squad of CCG operatives scrambled to block their path. The lead investigator, a first class by his uniform, barely had time to shout an order before CARRERA moved. In a blur, her Rinkaku tendrils lashed out, piercing through two of the guards, lifting them into the air before slamming them against the steel walls with bone-shattering force. ULTIMA followed up, her Ukaku wings unfurling as she unleashed a barrage of razor-sharp projectiles. The glowing shards of Kagoon tore through the remaining operatives like paper, their screams cut short as their bodies collapsed in a heap of blood and torn flesh. "Pathetic," ULTIMA muttered, stepping over the corpses. Tatara remained unimpressed. "Move. We don't have time to waste." They advanced deeper into the facility, tearing through resistance as they went. The prison's automated defenses activated, turrets emerging from the walls and firing rounds of concentrated RC suppressants. ULTIMA and CARRERA dodged with ease, their Kakuja armor deflecting the shots. Ito, meanwhile, darted forward with inhuman agility, tearing the turrets from their mounts with gleeful brutality. "These guys really thought this was enough to keep us out?" Ito mused as she wiped her clawed fingers against her cloak. The deeper they delved, the stronger the resistance became. A group of senior investigators attempted to mount a defense at a fortified checkpoint, wielding their quinks with trained precision. One of them, a burly man with a massive Kukaku quinkwe, roared as he swung his weapon down at ULTIMA. She sidestepped smoothly and retaliated with a devastating slash of her own Kakuja-clad claws, slicing through his armor and cutting deep into his chest. "Ugh!" The man staggered back, clutching at his wounds. "You monsters!" CARRERA ended his sentence prematurely with a devastating strike to the skull, caving it in with the sheer force of her Rinkaku tendrils. With the last of the resistance eliminated, Tatara signaled for the operatives to breach the heavy steel doors of the high-security wing. Explosives were planted, and within moments, the doors were blasted open, revealing the imprisoned ghouls within. The first to step out was a towering figure, his muscular frame casting an imposing shadow. Shachi, a veteran ghoul of formidable strength, surveyed the invaders with a calm yet wary expression. "You must be Aogiri Tree," he stated, his voice deep and controlled. "That's right," Ito replied with a mischievous grin. "We're here to set you free." From another cell emerged Roma, a ghoul with an unsettling smile that sent a shiver down the spine of even some of the Aogiri operatives. "Oh, it's about time someone let me out," she cooed, stretching her arms. "I was getting so bored in here." Several other ghouls followed, some weak and malnourished, others still full of fighting spirit. Among them, a familiar figure emerged. Naki, the loyal subordinate of the late White Suit's leader, Yamori. His expression immediately brightened as he saw Ito and the others. "Big sis!" Naki cried, running toward Ito. "You finally came to get me. I knew you wouldn't leave me behind." Ito rolled her eyes but didn't push him away. Yeah, don't get too emotional, we're not done yet." Tatara quickly assessed the prisoners. "We're taking those strong enough to fight. The rest can make their own choices." Some of the freed ghouls hesitated, uncertainty evident in their eyes. However, many saw the chance at revenge against the CCG and nodded in agreement. Ultimately, 25 ghouls ranked A, alongside Shachi, and Naki chose to follow Augiri. Good. Now we move, Tatara ordered. Just as they were about to make their exit, alarms blared once more. A voice crackled over the prison's intercom system. Warning. Special class investigators inbound. Engage with extreme caution. Tatara scowled. Damn. The Arima unit is coming. We leave, now. Ito sighed dramatically. A shame. I would have loved to see Arima's face. Ultima and Carrera exchanged glances. They too relished the thought of facing the legendary investigator again to get their revenge, but they knew better than to throw themselves into a battle they weren't prepared for. Let's go, Ultima said, taking off at high speed. Carrera smirked. Fine, but next time, we fight. With that, the group made their escape into the night, leaving behind a trail of devastation and a message that would shake the CCG to its core. Augiri Tree was stronger than ever, and their war had only just begun. Chapter 22. The result of the raid in Augiri Tree Base. The night was eerily silent as the remnants of Augiri Tree moved through the desolate cityscape. The glow of distant fires from the battle at the 11th Ward still illuminated the sky, casting flickering shadows across the ruined buildings. Ultima and Carrera, their Kakugan still activated, marched at the forefront of the group, their bodies tense and alert. The raid on Cochlea had gone almost too smoothly, their superior strength overwhelming the sparse defenses, but now they were heading back to what remained of their base, uncertain of what they would find. Behind them, the group of rescued ghouls followed in a loose formation. Among them were Shachi, Naki, and 25 other ghouls of varying ranks, each with their own reasons for joining Augiri. Some sought power, others sought revenge, and a few simply needed a place to belong. Whatever their motivations, all of them now followed Tatara, who led them with his usual cold, calculating demeanor. As they approached the designated meeting point, the scene before them was grim. The once formidable Augiri stronghold had been reduced to rubble, and the stench of death lingered in the air. Scattered corpses of ghouls and CCG investigators alike littered the battlefield. The survivors who remained were few, and among them, only Ayato Kirishima, severely injured, and the ever-mysterious Noro stood as the highest-ranking members left. Ultima's golden eyes scanned the wreckage, her lips curling into a grimace. Damn, this place is a mess. We were only gone for a short while, and everything's turned to hell. Carrera crossed her arms, her skeletal Kakuja armor still faintly pulsating from the residual effects of her transformation. TCH. I was hoping there would be more left to return to. What a waste. Tatara stepped forward, his red mask gleaming under the dim light. Ayato, report. Ayato, sitting against the crumbling remains of a concrete wall, let out a ragged breath. His body was covered in blood, his left arm hanging limp at his side. He gritted his teeth, his frustration evident. That bastard. The one-eyed ghoul. He destroyed everything. Ultima and Carrera exchanged glances. They had encountered Kaneki before, back when he was first captured, but now, he had changed. Tatara's eyes narrowed. Explain. Ayato spat to the side before continuing. He wasn't like before. At first, he seemed weak, but then, he just snapped. He tore through our people like they were nothing. Yamori, the Bin brothers. They're dead. He broke half of all my damn bones in my body and left me to rot. His voice was laced with resentment, but there was an undeniable hint of fear in his eyes. Carrera scoffed. Hey. So that weakling actually became something worth fighting. Now I'm interested. Ultima, however, was more calculating. If he took down Yamori and you by himself, then he's no joke. That means he's stronger than we last saw him. Tatara absorbed the information in silence, his mind already working through the possibilities. Noro? The towering, masked ghoul stood unmoving, his eerie presence as unsettling as ever. He gave no verbal response, but a subtle nod indicated that he had also witnessed the destruction firsthand. Tatara finally turned back to the group. This base is lost. We move to a new location. Ultima arched a brow. And where exactly are we supposed to go? Tatara didn't hesitate. The 18th Ward. There's an abandoned facility there that will serve as our new stronghold. We leave immediately. Naki, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stepped forward. Wait, we're just gonna leave like this? After everything? Tatara's gaze was sharp. This place is compromised. The CCG will be back, and we're in no position to fight them head-on. We take what we can and regroup. We will rebuild. Naki looked like he wanted to argue, but Shachi placed a firm hand on his shoulder, silencing him. Tatara is right. We need to think strategically. Ultima sighed and stretched her arms. Fine, fine. Let's move before those pigeons come back. Carrera smirked, cracking her knuckles. I wouldn't mind a little more action before we go, but I guess it's smarter to leave while we can. With that, the group began their departure. Ayato was supported by some of the lower-ranked ghouls, and the remaining members of Aogiri followed closely behind. As they disappeared into the night, leaving behind the smoldering remains of their former base, one thing was clear: Aogiri Tree was far from finished. In the manga, Kaneki doesn't join the Aogiri. In fact, he creates an organization against the Aogiri. Chapter 23. The battle for the nurse. The dim glow of neon lights flickered across the damp alleyways of the 18th Ward, casting eerie shadows on the crumbling buildings that housed the Aogiri Tree. It had been a month since Carrera and Ultima had settled into the new base, adapting to their surroundings and keeping a low profile. The aftermath of their previous battles still lingered in their minds, but there was no time for reflection. Aogiri had a mission, and they were about to receive their next orders. A soft knock echoed against the metal door of their shared quarters before it creaked open. Ito, the one-eyed owl herself, stepped inside, her playful grin barely masking the weight of the information she carried. Wake up, you two, she said, her voice light but commanding. I have a job for you. Carrera, who had been lounging on the floor with her arms folded behind her head, opened one eye lazily. Already? We just got comfortable. Ultima, sitting cross-legged on the edge of the bed, tilted her head. Something interesting, I hope? Ito chuckled. That depends on your definition of interesting. Your task is simple: capture the nurse who assists Dr. Kano. We need to find his laboratory, and she's our best lead. Carrera's lips curled into a smirk. And we're supposed to just grab her and bring her in? That's it? Ito shook her head. Not exactly. You two are there as insurance. You'll be accompanying Shachi and Naki, along with Gagi and Guj. Your job is to observe and intervene only if a real threat appears. We don't want to lose our targets over a stupid brawl. Ultima glanced at Carrera, who sighed dramatically. Babysitting duty. Fantastic. Oh, don't pout, Ito teased. If things go south, I expect you two to have fun. And who knows, maybe someone will make it interesting for you. With that, she turned and exited the room, leaving Carrera and Ultima to prepare. Within moments, they were out the door, joining Shachi, Naki, Gagi, and Guj as they made their way through the desolate streets toward their target. They reached the designated building in silence, perching atop the rooftop like watchful predators. Below them, Naki stood with Gagi and Guj, waiting impatiently for their target to appear. Shachi remained beside Ultima and Carrera, his arms crossed as he observed the street below with a calculated gaze. You know, Carrera mused, balancing on the edge of the rooftop, I don't see the point in all this sneaking around. We could just storm in, grab her, and be done with it. Efficiency isn't always the best approach, Shachi replied without looking at her. This isn't just about capturing someone. It's about control, timing, and precision. If we scare her off, we lose our lead. Ultima leaned forward, resting her chin on her palm. Fair enough. But I hope this doesn't turn into a waste of our time. As if on cue, a shadow moved at the far end of the street. The nurse, a woman with short dark hair and wary eyes, stepped out of a hidden entrance, scanning her surroundings cautiously. Gagi and Guj exchanged glances before signaling Naki, who immediately started toward her. Just as Naki reached for the woman's arm, a blur of movement interrupted the scene. A figure landed gracefully between them, causing Naki to recoil. The intruder's white hair shimmered under the dim streetlights, and a chillingly calm voice followed. I'm afraid she's coming with us. Carrera's eyes widened slightly. Well, look who decided to show up. Standing in front of them was Kaneki Ken, the one-eyed ghoul. At his side stood Tsukiyama Shu, the self-proclaimed gourmet, and behind them were Banjo and his subordinates. Shachi's expression didn't change, but Carrera and Ultima could feel the subtle shift in the air. This wasn't a simple mission anymore, it was a confrontation. You're in our way, Naki growled, his fingers twitching as he glared at Kaneki. Kaneki, unfazed, simply tilted his head. And you're in ours. We both want the same thing, but I can't let you take her. Ultima tapped her chin thoughtfully. This could get messy. Shachi, however, had already made his decision. Without warning, he leapt from the rooftop, landing with a force that cracked the pavement beneath his feet. The shockwaves sent a rush of air outward, forcing Kaneki to step back just in time to avoid a crushing blow. Carrera laughed. "Oh, now this is getting good." Ultima smirked. "Think we should step in?" "Not yet," Shachi interrupted. "I'll handle this." Kaneki straightened, his gaze steady as his cocoon unfurled behind him. "I was hoping to avoid a fight, but if you insist." And with that, the battle began. Shachi moved like a force of nature, his strikes powerful yet precise. Kaneki countered with agility, dodging and weaving between attacks, his cocoon lashing out like a flurry of blades. Sparks flew as their blows connected, sending shockwaves through the alleyway. From above, Carrera and Ultima watched with sharp interest. "He's fast," Ultima noted. "And he's not holding back," Carrera added. "That's what I like to see." Down below, Tsukiyama made his move, attempting to flank Shachi. However, Naki intercepted him, launching himself at the gourmet with reckless abandon. Gagi and Guj joined in, their movements chaotic but effective, forcing Tsukiyama to defend himself with elegant yet deadly precision. Meanwhile, Banjo and his men moved toward the nurse, attempting to secure her in the chaos. Ultima's eyes narrowed. "Looks like we might have to step in after all." Carrera grinned. "Finally." In a blur, the two leapt from the rooftop, landing between Banjo's group and the nurse. The impact of their landing sent debris flying, forcing Banjo to shield his eyes. "Going somewhere?" Carrera taunted, flexing her fingers as her cocoon flared. Ultima cracked her knuckles. "I think you should reconsider." Banjo hesitated, recognizing that the odds had just shifted drastically. His subordinates exchanged uneasy glances. Kaneki, noticing the change, clicked his tongue. "TCH. This complicates things." Shachi didn't let up, pressing his assault with relentless force. Kaneki was keeping up, but the strain was evident. Eto's orders echoed in Carrera and Ultima's minds: observe, but intervene if necessary. And judging by the way things were escalating, intervention was inevitable. Ultima smirked. "Well, this just got a lot more fun." Carrera's eyes gleamed. "Let's see what they've got." And with that, they lunged into the chaos, ready to turn the tide of battle. Chapter 24. I decided to change the entrace of Ultima and Carrera into the battle because I thought would be a massacre if Ultima and Carrera fought against Banjo and his subordinates. The battlefield was alive with chaos, but to Carrera, it felt more like an effortless warm-up. As she stood on the rooftop, watching the skirmish below, her blue eyes glowed with a flicker of amusement. The ghouls of Banjo's faction were nothing but mere distractions in her eyes, annoying pests that didn't even warrant the use of her full power. She turned to Ultima, a confident smirk plastered across her face. "I can handle this on my own," she said, stretching her arms above her head in a lazy manner. "These guys, not even worth both of us getting involved." Ultima chuckled at Carrera's arrogance but knew well enough that she wasn't bluffing. Fine. Don't take too long though. We have a mission to complete." With a slight bend of her knees, Carrera propelled herself off the rooftop, landing gracefully amidst Banjo and his subordinates. The impact of her landing sent a wave of dust flying around them. The ghouls tensed, immediately getting into battle stances. Banjo narrowed his eyes at Carrera, recognizing her immense power. "We're not letting you take her," he declared, his voice firm despite the anxiety creeping up his spine. Carrera grinned widely, her excitement bubbling. "Oh, and what exactly are you going to do to stop me?" Without waiting for an answer, she lunged forward with explosive speed. The nearest ghoul barely had time to react before Carrera's cocoon lashed out, slicing through his torso. Blood splattered as his body was sent flying into a crumbling wall. Banjo's subordinates launched themselves at her simultaneously, trying to overwhelm her with numbers. Carrera laughed as she danced between them, dodging attacks with effortless fluidity. Her cocoon lashed out again, piercing through two more ghouls before she twisted her body and slammed a devastating kick into another, sending him crashing to the ground with a sickening crack. "Pathetic," Carrera taunted, shaking her head. "I expected more of a challenge." Meanwhile, Shachi's battle with Kaneki was escalating. The older, more experienced ghoul barely broke a sweat as he countered every one of Kaneki's desperate attacks. The white-haired ghoul was fast, but he lacked the refined technique to truly compete with someone of Shachi's caliber. Kaneki's cocoon lashed out in rapid succession, but Shachi dodged with minimal effort, weaving through the attacks with surgical precision. His counter was brutal, a powerful strike to Kaneki's ribs that sent him skidding across the pavement. Kaneki coughed up blood,
his vision blurring for a moment. He pushed himself up, refusing to give in, but Shachi was already upon him. A devastating punch landed square in Kanaki's stomach, making him double over as more blood spewed from his lips.
Shachi chuckled, his deep voice resonating with amusement. "You're too weak, boy. And yet you thought you could oppose Aogiri? Foolish." Kaneki clenched his fists, his vision swimming as he tried to rise again. But before he could retaliate, Shachi's knee collided with his jaw, sending him crashing back to the ground. On the other side of the battlefield, the gourmet, Tsukiyama, was locked in combat with Naki. Unlike CARRERA's overwhelming domination, their fight was more evenly matched. Naki was relentless, swinging wildly with brute force, while Tsukiyama relied on his agility and precision to evade and counter. "You're quite the brute, aren't you?" Tsukiyama smirked, dodging another wild strike. "But raw strength alone won't be enough to best me." Naki growled in frustration, throwing another powerful punch, which Tsukiyama barely managed to avoid. The gourmet retaliated with a quick slash of his kagoon, cutting into Naki's shoulder. Naki winced but didn't falter, his determination burning stronger. High above, ULTIMA had grown tired of the chaos. She turned her attention to the real objective, the nurse. With a swift motion, she dropped from the rooftop, landing lightly beside the terrified woman. The nurse barely had time to react before ULTIMA's fist connected with her stomach in a precise, controlled strike. The nurse let out a weak gasp before crumpling to the ground, unconscious. ULTIMA hoisted the unconscious woman onto her shoulder and turned toward her allies. "We got what we came for," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Let's go." Shachi, still looming over a battered Kaneki, spared the ghoul one last glance before stepping away. "He's not even worth finishing off," he muttered with disappointment. CARRERA, having effortlessly taken down Banjo's entire group, flicked some blood off her hand and grinned. "Ah, but I was just starting to have fun." "We're leaving," ULTIMA repeated firmly. Reluctantly, CARRERA sighed and followed suit. The mission had been a success, despite the minor inconveniences. With the nurse in their possession, they would soon uncover the location of Dr. Kano's lab. As they disappeared into the night, the remnants of their enemies lay broken in their wake, a testament to the sheer power of Aogiri's elite. Only a question: do you prefer this type of chapter that are short or do you prefer long chapters? Answer in the comments. Chapter 25. The cruel interrogation. The night was thick with an eerie stillness as ULTIMA and CARRERA strode into the Aogiri's hideout, their silhouettes cutting through the dim glow of the underground corridors. Their mission had been a success, and ULTIMA still carried the unconscious nurse slung over her shoulder like a discarded rag doll. Her violet hair swayed lightly as she walked, her lips curled into a satisfied smirk. CARRERA, her golden locks barely touched by the bloodstains on her coat, strode beside her with an amused expression. They entered the chamber where Ito awaited them. The one-eyed owl sat lazily on her throne, a mischievous glint in her eye as she gazed at the two demons. Noro stood at her side, silent and unmoving as ever. The tension in the air was thick but familiar. ULTIMA barely wasted a second before dropping the nurse onto the cold stone floor with a dull thud. She then crossed her arms, her golden eyes gleaming. "Mission complete. We captured her without much trouble," she declared, her voice tinged with boredom. "Some pests got in the way, though. That one-eyed brat and his group tried to interfere, but Shachi beat him down like a misbehaving dog." Ito chuckled, her fingers tapping idly on the armrest of her seat. "Oh? The little king put up a fight? How amusing." CARRERA scoffed, running a hand through her messy blonde hair. "TCH. If he was really a king, he wouldn't have gone down so fast. That geezer Shachi barely broke a sweat. If I had been the one fighting, I'd have turned that idiot into paste." Ito grinned but didn't respond. Instead, her gaze drifted down to the unconscious woman at ULTIMA's feet. "And what should we do with her?" ULTIMA asked, though there was already a glint of anticipation in her eyes. "Torture her, interrogate her, rip her limb from limb just for fun." Ito shrugged, her expression playful yet laced with something darker. "She's yours now. Do whatever you want with her, but make sure you get the information on Kano's laboratory before she dies." The second those words left Ito's lips, a wicked smile spread across ULTIMA's face. CARRERA chuckled beside her, knowing exactly what was going through her friend's mind. "Oh, now this is gonna be fun," CARRERA mused, resting a hand on her hip. "Try not to break her too quickly, all right?" ULTIMA grabbed the nurse's collar and effortlessly dragged her away, her boots echoing through the corridor as she headed to the torture chamber. "I'll take my time," she promised, her voice laced with sick anticipation. The torture chamber was a cold, bleak place, just the way Ultima liked it. Chains dangled from the ceiling, the scent of dried blood lingering in the air. The walls were thick and soundproof, ensuring that no matter how much someone screamed, their cries would never escape. Ultima slammed the nurse's body onto the chair in the center of the room and secured her with tight restraints. It didn't take long for the woman to stir awake, her eyes fluttering open as a groggy groan escaped her lips. "Where?" she mumbled, her vision still hazy. But the moment she saw Ultima grinning down at her, she froze. Ultima leaned in close, her violet eyes shimmering with delight. "Good morning, little rat. Welcome to hell." The nurse's breathing grew erratic as realization dawned on her. She tried to move, but the chains kept her firmly in place. What do you want from me?" Ultima's grin widened. "Oh, nothing much. Just a bit of information. Where's Kano's laboratory?" The nurse's lips pressed together, her fear momentarily overshadowed by resolve. I won't tell you." Ultima sighed dramatically. "Oh dear, why do they always say that? It's like you people think I'm giving you a choice." She grabbed a scalpel from the nearby tray, twirling it between her fingers. "Tell me now, and I'll make this easy. Stay quiet, and... well, let's just say I have ways of making people talk." The nurse clenched her jaw, refusing to answer. Ultima rolled her eyes. "Fine, have it your way." With a swift movement, she plunged the scalpel into the nurse's thigh. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the air as the woman convulsed in agony. Ultima merely watched, tilting her head like a curious cat. "Oh, that sounded painful. Imagine what happens if I go deeper." She twisted the blade slightly, earning another scream. Blood seeped from the wound, pooling beneath the chair. Ultima's heart pounded in excitement, her sadistic nature fully awakened. "Where is Kano's lab?" she asked again, her tone playful yet laced with malice. "I don't know," the nurse sobbed, her breath hitching in pain. "Ultima TSKED. Wrong answer." She grabbed a pair of pliers from the table and forcefully gripped the woman's pinky finger. The nurse's eyes widened in horror. "No, please." Crack. The bone snapped like a twig. The nurse's scream was raw and broken, her entire body trembling. "Oh wow, did that hurt?" Ultima mocked. "Oops, I guess I don't know my own strength." She reached for another finger. "Wait," the nurse sobbed. "I can tell you something." Ultima halted, her interest piqued. "Oh, go on." The nurse panted heavily, trying to steady herself. "Kano. He moves locations frequently, but the last time I saw him, he was operating in an underground facility near the 9th Ward. Ultima narrowed her eyes. "And you're not lying, are you? Because if you are, well, I'd hate to get creative." "I swear." The nurse cried. Please, that's all I know." Ultima studied her for a moment before breaking into a delighted grin. "See? That wasn't so hard, was it?" The nurse sagged in her chair, exhausted and broken. Are you going to let me go now?" Ultima laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed through the chamber. "Oh, sweetheart, did I ever say I was going to let you go?" The nurse's blood ran cold. What?" Ultima stretched her arms, tilting her head. "Ito said I could do whatever I wanted with you once I got the info. And you did give me what I wanted. But, you see, I'm not a merciful person." She raised her hand, summoning her cocoon, 4 writhing, razor-sharp tails. No, please," the nurse shrieked, struggling against her restraints. Ultima's grin widened. "Let's play some more." Outside the chamber, Carrera leaned against the wall, arms crossed, listening to the muffled screams. She smirked to herself. Ultima's really enjoying this one. Almost makes me jealous." After what seemed like an eternity, the screaming stopped. The door creaked open, and Ultima stepped out, wiping the blood from her hands with a white cloth. Carrera raised an eyebrow. "Done already?" Ultima grinned. "She lasted longer than I thought, but I got everything we need. Kano's last known location is in the 9th Ward." Carrera's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Well then, looks like it's time for another hunt." Ultima chuckled darkly. "Oh, I can't wait." Ultima and Carrera made their way back to Edo's quarters, their footsteps echoing through the dimly lit halls of the Augiri base. Ultima, still exhilarated from her earlier session with the unfortunate nurse, wore a wide grin as she dragged Carrera along. Unlike her usual energetic self, Carrera was quieter, her arms crossed as she followed her companion. The door creaked open as Ultima stepped in first, dropping the bloodied scrap of cloth she had used to clean her hands onto the floor. Ito sat cross-legged on her makeshift throne, her mismatched eyes gleaming with interest. Naki and his ever-loyal subordinates, Gagi and Gouge, stood nearby, awaiting orders. Ultima placed her hands on her hips, her voice laced with amusement. Well, that was fun. Your little nurse was quite the talker after a little convincing. Isn't that right, Carrera? Carrera shrugged. You mean after you broke almost every bone in her body and dangled her over the edge of the balcony? Yeah, she sure had a lot to say then. Ito chuckled, leaning forward. And, where is the esteemed Dr. Kano hiding? Ultima's grin widened. Deep in the 9th ward. An underground lab hidden beneath a mansion. The place is rigged with security measures and filled with half-ghouls and other failed experiments. She licked her lips. Sounds like a playground, doesn't it? Ito nodded, taking a moment to process the information. That confirms my suspicions. It makes sense that he would be hiding in such a place, considering his experiments. We'll need a solid team for this. Naki perked up at this, stepping forward. Oi, boss, I wanna go. I've been itching for a real fight since we left Cochlea. Ito smirked. Good. You'll be coming with me. She then turned to Ultima. And you? I assume you wouldn't want to miss out on a mission like this? Ultima's eyes gleamed with excitement. Oh, you know me too well. Torturing that nurse was just an appetizer. I want the main course. Carrera yawned, leaning against the doorframe. Guess I'm sitting this one out. Shame. Sounds like fun. Ito shook her head. You and I both know that you don't exactly enjoy sneaking around. This mission requires some level of subtlety before we go in guns blazing. Carrera rolled her eyes. Fine. Just don't have too much fun without me. Ito turned back to Naki. You'll be taking your subordinates. We need numbers in case things go sideways. Naki grinned, pounding a fist into his palm. Hell yeah. Gagi, Gouge, you hear that? We're finally gonna wreck some stuff? The two ghouls cheered in unison, their excitement infectious. Ultima chuckled, stretching her arms. Sounds like we have our team. When do we move? Eto's expression darkened slightly. Tomorrow night. We need time to prepare and make sure everything goes according to plan. Dr. Kano isn't someone to take lightly. He might not be a fighter, but his creations are unpredictable. Ultima's smile never wavered. Good. I've been needing something interesting to do. Ito leaned back, a sinister glint in her eye. Then let's make this invasion a night to remember. A.N. Do you prefer this type of chapter or short chapters that I was writing in the others' chapters? Chapter 26. The battle for Kano. The cold night air wrapped around them as Ultima, Ito, and Naki, along with his subordinates, made their way through the desolate streets of the 9th ward. Their footsteps were silent, a sharp contrast to the howling wind that cut through the alleys like an unseen predator. The objective was clear. Infiltrate the laboratory of Dr. Kano and recruit him into the Aogiri tree. The mansion loomed before them, an imposing structure, eerily quiet. The lack of guards or any sign of movement was unsettling. Ultima narrowed her glowing golden eyes as she scanned the area. Too quiet, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Ito chuckled, her ever-present smirk widening. Expecting a grand welcoming party? Kano is too careful for that. He's not the type to leave his front door unguarded unless he has a reason. Maybe he ran away, Naki grumbled, folding his arms as he looked up at the windows. This place gives me the creeps. Oh, we'll find out soon enough, Ito said, stepping forward and pushing the mansion doors open without hesitation. The wooden doors groaned, revealing a dimly lit, dust-covered hall. Ultima tilted her head slightly, eyes darting across the room. No guards, no resistance. This isn't right. You worry too much, Ito teased. But you do have a point. Let's find the entrance to the underground lab. They spread out, checking rooms and corners with careful precision. It didn't take long before Ultima called out. Found it, she said, standing in front of an inconspicuous wooden door leading downward. The air around the entrance felt heavier, almost suffocating. Naki cracked his knuckles. About time. Let's get this over with. As they descended, the wooden stairs creaked under their weight. At the bottom, they found themselves in what seemed like a small, empty basement with no apparent exits. Naki frowned. You sure this is it? Feels like a dead end. Ito let out a soft chuckle. running her fingers along the wall. "Oh, Kano. You really did put effort into hiding yourself." Then, turning to Naki, she gestured toward the wall. "Cut it." Naki blinked. "What? Just trust me. Use your Kagoon and slice the wall." Though confused, Naki did as instructed. His Kagoon extended, slashing into the surface, only to reveal something unexpected. The wall bled. Naki stumbled back. "The hell?" Ultima's eyes widened slightly. "So it's made of RC cells." Ito grinned, her single eye gleaming with amusement. "Indeed. Just like the walls of the 24th Ward. Kano really knows how to build his fortresses." Ultima touched the fleshy wall, feeling the pulsation beneath her fingertips. "So we just walk through it?" "You got it," Ito said. Without hesitation, she stepped through the torn opening. Naki scowled. "Damn creepy. But fine." He and his subordinates followed, Ultima bringing up the rear. Beyond the RC wall, an entirely different world awaited them. The space opened up into a vast underground facility, filled with towering metal structures, glass chambers, and the faint hum of machinery. The air was thick with the scent of chemicals and something more sinister, the distinct, underlying stench of flesh and decay. Ito stretched her arms. "Ah, finally. Now, let's find the doctor." Ultima nodded. "We should split up to cover more ground." "Agreed," Ito replied. "But don't get careless. Kano might not have guards upstairs, but down here, he's bound to have some surprises waiting for us." Naki grinned. "Let them try. I'm in the mood for a fight." Ultima merely smirked before turning on her heel, disappearing into the shadows as the hunt began. Ultima moved silently through the dimly lit corridors of the underground lab, her sharp senses scanning for any sign of Dr. Kano. The air was thick with the sterile scent of chemicals and the faint metallic tang of blood. As she advanced, her ears picked up the faintest sound, footsteps, slow but deliberate. A smirk played on her lips as she realized she was no longer alone. With a flick of her ukaku wings, she propelled herself upward, pressing her body against the ceiling, hidden in the shadows. From her elevated vantage point, she spotted her target, Kaneki Ken, the so-called one-eyed ghoul. The last time they had encountered each other, he had been humiliated by Shachi, utterly outclassed. Now, fate had brought them together again. Her grin widened. Well, she purred, dropping down with lethal speed, her hand aiming straight for his chest. Kaneki barely managed to dodge in time, rolling to the side in a blur of motion, the force of her strike cracking the tiled floor where he had stood a split second ago. He sprang back to his feet, his mismatched eyes narrowing at her. "You again," he muttered, his voice edged with both irritation and caution. Ultima stretched her limbs lazily, her Kagoon flexing behind her like deadly wings. "We meet again, Eyepatch," she said in a teasing tone, her golden eyes glinting. "This time, I'm going to fight you." Kaneki's expression remained unreadable, but she could sense the tension in his stance. He was wary of her. Smart, but it wouldn't save him. Without warning, she lunged, her Ukaku Kagoon firing a barrage of crystallized projectiles at him. Kaneki twisted his body midair, dodging with inhuman agility. He retaliated with his own Kagoon, tendrils whipping toward her. Ultima smirked, sidestepping effortlessly, the sharp appendages slicing through the air inches from her face. Not bad, she mused, sending another volley of projectiles his way. Kaneki deflected some with his Kagoon, but a few grazed his arm, drawing thin lines of blood. He didn't even flinch. Kaneki countered by closing the distance between them, his movements fluid and precise. He struck out with a powerful kick aimed at her ribs. Ultima blocked it with her forearm, the impact reverberating through her bones. Her grin widened. "You're not as pathetic as before," she taunted, landing a kick of her own against his side, sending him skidding backward. "But still, too weak for me to use my Kakuja." Kaneki clenched his fists. "You should take me more seriously," he warned, his Kagoon unfurling menacingly. Ultima only laughed. "Why would I? This is fun." They clashed again, their Kagoons colliding in a dazzling display of power. Ultima was faster, sharper, her attacks forcing Kaneki on the defensive. She moved like a specter, dodging his blows with ease, her own strikes landing with increasing frequency. A punch to his gut. A kick to his ribs. A slash across his shoulder. He was holding his ground, but barely. Finally, she saw her opening. With a sudden burst of speed, she delivered a crushing downward blow. Crack. Kaneki's body was driven into the floor, the impact creating a crater beneath him. The force sent him crashing into a lower level, the ground collapsing beneath his weight. Ultima hovered over the hole, peering down curiously. She landed gracefully beside him, taking in their new surroundings. They had fallen into a massive underground chamber, lined with rows upon rows of glass capsules. The dim glow of fluorescent lights cast eerie reflections on the surfaces, revealing what was inside. Oh, Ultima's interest was piqued as she examined one particular capsule at the center of the room. Inside, a woman with long purple hair floated in a suspended state. Rise Kamishiro. And standing above the capsule, smirking down at them from a platform, was none other than Dr. Kano himself. Ah, what an unexpected reunion, the doctor mused, his tone one of mild amusement. I see you've met one of my greatest creations, Golden Reaper. And of course, Kaneki. How fitting that you would arrive here. Ultima's grin widened. Ah, now this got interesting. Kaneki, still catching his breath, forced himself to his feet, his gaze locked onto Rise's capsule. His entire body tensed at the sight of her. Dr. Kano, he growled, his voice laced with anger. Ultima tilted her head, golden eyes gleaming with intrigue. Looks like we have a lot to talk about, no? Chapter 27. Kano Revelation. Kaneki and Ultima stood frozen for a moment, their gazes locked onto Dr. Kano, who stood atop the platform above the capsule containing Rise. The cold, sterile light of the laboratory flickered slightly, casting eerie shadows across the room. The rhythmic beeping of the medical equipment was the only sound that filled the otherwise silent space. Kano smirked as he peered down at Kaneki, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of pride and condescension. Kaneki-ken, he began, his voice calm and composed, you are my greatest creation. Kaneki clenched his fists, his body trembling with barely contained rage. Your creation? You turned me into a ghoul against my will? His kagoon twitched behind him, a clear sign of his growing hostility. Kano chuckled lightly, unbothered by Kaneki's anger. I saved your life, Kaneki. Had I not intervened, you would have died that day beneath the steel beams. Instead, you have been given the strength to survive in this cruel world. Don't talk as if you did me a favor, Kaneki snapped. You didn't save me, you cursed me. You experimented on me, just like you did with countless others. You're not a doctor, you're a monster. Ultima, who had been standing silently nearby, finally interjected with a sly grin. Tisk, tisk. I think you're being a little dramatic, Eyepatch. Kano might have turned you into a ghoul, but I'd say you're doing just fine now, aren't you? She twirled her purple hair around her fingers, watching the conversation unfold with amusement. Kaneki shot a glare at Ultima but ignored her comment. He focused back on Kano, who now crossed his arms, tilting his head as if studying Kaneki like a specimen under a microscope. Your perception is flawed, Kano continued. The world is nothing more than a distorted cage, a twisted cage that limits us all. Humans and ghouls alike are bound by constraints, by rules forced upon them. My goal is to break that cage and create a world where beings like you, like the Kuro and Shiro twins, can thrive without limitations. Kaneki felt a pit form in his stomach at the mention of Kuro and Shiro. So that's what this was about. You created one-eyed ghouls just to push your own agenda? To force some twisted evolution onto the world? Kano smiled. Exactly. And you, Kaneki, have the potential to be the bridge between humans and ghouls. You have already proven your strength. Imagine what you could accomplish if you joined us. Ultima rolled her eyes and scoffed. Oh, come on, Kano. You really think this guy has what it takes? He couldn't even beat Shachi, let alone someone like me. Kaneki gritted his teeth but refused to be baited by Ultima. His focus remained on Kano. I would never join Aogiri, he spat, his voice resolute. I refuse to be a pawn in your sick game. Kano sighed as if disappointed but not surprised. I expected as much. However, you are still young. There is much about this world that you do not yet understand. Kaneki narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? Kano's smirk widened. The existence of Aogiri itself is linked to Yoshimura. Kaneki felt as though the ground beneath him had vanished. What? Yoshimura, Kano continued, is one of the driving forces behind all of this. His past and the choices he made shaped the current power struggle. You believe he is simply an old, kind-hearted cafe owner? No, Kaneki. He has blood on his hands. More than you can imagine. He is the reason Aogiri flourished. Kaneki stood frozen, his mind racing. Could this be true? Could Yoshimura, the man who had guided him, who had given him a place where he belonged, truly be tied to Aogiri's rise? You're lying, he finally muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Kano shook his head. Join me, and I will show you the truth of this world. You have been manipulated, Kaneki. You still don't see the bigger picture. But if you come with me, I can open your eyes. Kaneki felt paralyzed. The weight of Kano's words pressed down on him like an unbearable force. Doubt and anger swirled inside him, but before he could even process his next move, a loud crash echoed through the laboratory. The glass capsule holding Rise shattered, shards scattering across the room. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving with speed and precision. Before anyone could react, the unconscious body of Rise was lifted away from the wreckage. Kano's eyes widened in shock. Who, standing atop the fallen platform, cradling Rise in his arms, was Yomo. Kaneki's breath caught in his throat. Yomo. Yomo's gaze was unwavering as he looked at Kaneki. You have to choose your own path, Kaneki. Don't let anyone else decide it for you. Kano's expression darkened. You dare interfere? Before Kano could make a move, Yomo leapt backward, dashing toward an exit point. Kano snarled and gestured for Ultima to stop him, but Ultima merely crossed her arms, smirking as she watched the chaos unfold. Sorry, Doc, Ultima purred, but this is way more entertaining. Kaneki's body moved on instinct, his mind still clouded with confusion and uncertainty. Yomo, wait. But Yomo was already gone, vanishing into the depths of the underground corridors, taking Rise with him. Kano clenched his fists, seething with rage. Damn it, this wasn't supposed to happen. Kaneki, still shaken, barely heard Kano's words. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, doubt, anger, fear, and a lingering question that refused to leave his mind. What was the truth of this world? As the silence stretched in the lab, Ultima chuckled softly. Well, that was unexpected. What's next, Doc? She tilted her head playfully, her golden eyes gleaming with amusement. Kano exhaled sharply, adjusting his glasses. We adapt. There is still much work to be done. Kaneki remained still, fists clenched at his sides. He knew one thing for sure. Everything he thought he knew had just been shattered. Then Ultima watched as Kaneki launched himself toward Kano, his eyes burning with determination. A smirk crept onto her lips as she anticipated his reckless move. With blinding speed, she moved, intercepting him midair. Her fist crashed into his stomach with enough force to send him hurtling into the far wall. The impact sent cracks through the concrete, and Kaneki let out a gasp, blood dripping from his lips. Ultima tilted her head, her golden eyes gleaming with amusement. You're still so weak, Eyepatch. I expected more after our last fight. Kaneki groaned, struggling to his feet, his cocoon twitching behind him like restless serpents. He clenched his fists, fury evident in his expression, but before he could retaliate, Ultima had already turned her attention away from him. With a casual movement, she leapt onto the platform where Kano stood, watching the scene unfold with an unsettling calm. She grabbed him by the collar of his lab coat. Time to leave, Doctor. Kano barely reacted, his smile never faltering. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pressed a small button on a hidden control pad. The room shuddered as mechanical locks released with a series of sharp hisses. Below them, the walls opened to reveal 100 capsules lining the vast chamber. Inside, grotesque, half-formed ghouls twitched to life, their eyes hollow and their bodies twisted. Some lacked limbs, others had extra appendages, their RC cells surging erratically. A cacophony of roars and shrieks filled the air as they awoke from their artificial slumber. Kano chuckled softly. Even failures can be useful when they're numerous. They should keep you occupied, Kaneki. I look forward to our next meeting. Ultima let out a laugh, her grip tightening on Kano's coat as she carried him effortlessly toward the exit. She didn't even bother watching Kaneki's reaction, she knew he'd survive. Whether he'd come out of this fight the same, however, was another matter entirely. Where's the control room? She asked, her voice sharp as they sped down the corridor. Kano adjusted his glasses, unfazed by his abduction. Take the left corridor. You'll find a set of reinforced doors. That's where Ito should be. Without hesitation, Ultima burst into a sprint, her speed making the air around them howl. The reinforced doors stood no chance against her strength as she kicked them open, the steel bending inward like paper. Inside, Ito stood before a series of massive screens, each displaying different areas of the laboratory. The flickering monitors showed the chaos unfolding. Kaneki, now partially transformed into his half-Kakuja form, was engaged in a violent struggle with Amon. His movements were erratic, uncontrolled, his monstrous cocoon lashing out wildly as if he had lost all sense of reason. Ito turned, a sly grin on her face as she took in the sight of Ultima holding Kano. I see the mission was a success. Tatara will be pleased to know that Kano has joined us. Kano adjusted his glasses again, his expression unreadable. A pleasure to be here, truly. Ito ignored his sarcasm, instead focusing on one of the monitors displaying Amon's relentless assault against Kaneki. Amon might make excellent material for your experiments, Kano. His resilience is fascinating. Kano let out a thoughtful hum. An intriguing subject, indeed. With the right adjustments, he could be turned into something remarkable. Before anyone could respond, the door to the control room burst open once more. Kuro stood in the doorway, her breathing ragged, her entire body trembling. She was carrying something, or rather, someone. Shiro. Her twin's lifeless body was limp in her arms, blood staining her white hair. Kuro's voice broke as she turned to Kano, desperation evident in her teary eyes. Kano. Can you save her? Please. There has to be a way. For the first time that night, Kano's expression shifted slightly. He peered at Shiro's lifeless form, then shook his head. I'm afraid she's beyond saving. Her body has already failed. Kuro's grip tightened around her sister, her shoulders shaking as silent tears streamed down her face. She looked at Kano, then at Ito, then at Ultima. None of them had an answer for her.
Ito turned, walking toward the exit without another glance. Come, Ultima and Kano. We have much work to do. Ultima and Kano followed Ito, leaving Kuro behind with her sister's body. As they stepped out of the control room, the sounds of battle and destruction echoed through the halls. The laboratory was in chaos, but for Ultima, the mission was complete.
Chapter 28. Aftermath of Kano's mission. Ultima stepped through the dark, damp corridors of the Aogiri tree's hideout, her golden eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The mission had been a success. Not only had they secured the infamous Dr. Kano, but she had also faced Kaneki, without even needing to use her Kakuja. A wicked grin spread across her lips as she recalled the moment she had sent him crashing into the walls like a ragdoll. Beside her, Ito walked with an air of amusement, her hands tucked into her pockets, while Naki strode forward with his usual cocky confidence. Dr. Kano followed closely, his expression unreadable, though the glint in his eyes suggested he was already scheming something sinister. Upon entering the hideout, Ultima didn't waste time. Without a word to anyone, she made her way toward her shared quarters with CARRERA. She pushed open the door to their room and immediately spotted CARRERA lounging on their makeshift bed, stretching lazily with a bored expression on her face. CARRERA sat up the moment she noticed Ultima entering the room, her piercing blue eyes narrowing with curiosity. Took you long enough, she said, her voice laced with playful sarcasm. What, did you stop to take a nap in the middle of the mission? Ultima chuckled, kicking off her boots before flopping onto the bed beside her. Not quite, but the mission went off without a hitch. She leaned back on her elbows, looking at CARRERA with a smug grin. We recruited Dr. Kano. He's with us now. CARRERA raised an eyebrow. Huh. That's a big deal, isn't it? The guy's a freaking mad scientist. What made him join us? Ultima shrugged. Ito did most of the talking, but I think he sees us as his best shot at continuing his experiments. Either way, he's in. CARRERA smirked. Interesting. And what about you? Had any fun while you were out? Ultima's grin widened. Oh, you bet. I ran into that one-eyed ghoul again. You know, the one that Shachi humiliated? CARRERA's interest was piqued. Kaneki. The kid who lost so badly last time? Ultima nodded. That's the one. He actually tried to fight me this time. CARRERA burst out laughing. Are you serious? And let me guess, you wiped the floor with him. Ultima leaned in, eyes gleaming with excitement. Didn't even need my Kakuja. Just my Kagoon was enough. She gestured as if replaying the fight in her head. At first, he dodged pretty well, but he's still so predictable. I had him on the defensive the whole time. Then I slammed him into the floor, and he fell straight into some hidden chamber full of failed experiments. CARRERA whistled. Damn. Bet that hurt his pride more than his body. Ultima smirked. Probably. But the best part, Dr. Kano was in that chamber, watching everything. He gave Kaneki this whole speech about breaking the distorted cage of the world or something. The kid got all worked up, and just when things were getting interesting, that guy Yomo swooped in and stole Rise's body. CARRERA's amused expression faltered slightly. Rise's body? That girl Kano experimented on? Ultima nodded. Yeah. Kano didn't seem too happy about it, but he's still sticking with us. Carrera crossed her arms, deep in thought. HMPH. Sounds like things are about to get a lot more interesting. Ultima sat up and stretched. Speaking of interesting, I was thinking. It's been a while since we've had some real fun. She turned to Carrera, a mischievous glint in her eyes. How about we go on a little hunt? Carrera's lips curled into a grin. Now that's what I like to hear. She cracked her knuckles. I was getting bored sitting around here anyway. Ultima hopped to her feet. Then let's do it. We'll hit a quiet area, find some fresh prey, and enjoy a good meal. Carrera chuckled as she stood up. You always know how to make a night exciting. Together, the two left their room, slipping through the hideout's winding corridors. They moved like shadows, their hunger and anticipation growing with each step. The city outside was waiting for them, its streets filled with unsuspecting humans. Tonight, they would feast. Ultima and Carrera moved through the streets with the casual grace of hunters on the prowl, their golden and blue eyes scanning for prey. As they turned a corner into a narrow alley, a faint cry reached their ears. A woman's voice, pleading for help. Ultima and Carrera exchanged a glance, their expressions shifting from mild curiosity to excitement. They had found their entertainment for the night. Stepping into the alley, they saw the scene unfold before them. A man loomed over a trembling woman, his hands gripping her arms tightly as she struggled to break free. The desperation in her eyes was evident, but the man's grin was filled with twisted pleasure. The moment he saw Ultima and Carrera, his lustful smirk only widened. Oh, what do we have here? The man said, licking his lips as his gaze wandered over them. Two beauties stumbling into my little moment. Maybe you two would like to join in? Carrera's expression darkened instantly. Without a word, she activated her rinkaku, the crimson tendrils shooting out from her back with lethal precision. In a flash, one of the tendrils speared through the man's stomach, lifting him off the ground as blood sprayed against the alley walls. His eyes widened in shock, mouth opening to scream, but only blood gurgled out. You should have kept that filthy mouth shut, Carrera hissed, twisting her cocoon and tearing through his organs. She grinned as his body spasmed, savoring the agony before tossing his corpse aside like discarded trash. The woman, now freed from the man's grasp, turned to run, but she quickly realized she was trapped. The alley was a dead end. She turned back, fear consuming her face as she saw Ultima watching her with an amused expression. Before she could scream, sharp shards of cocoon shot through the air, piercing her limbs and pinning her against the cold brick wall. The pain was overwhelming, and she whimpered, unable to move. Ultima approached slowly, tilting her head as she admired her handiwork. You humans are always so pathetic. Always running, always begging. It's boring. She crouched in front of the woman, golden eyes gleaming in the dim light. But maybe you can entertain me a little. Carrera had already begun feasting, tearing into the man's flesh without hesitation. The wet sounds of her meal filled the alley, but Ultima took her time. She liked to play with her food. With a flick of her finger, she sent another shard slicing through the woman's cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. The woman whimpered, tears mixing with the crimson trail. Please, please, don't, she sobbed, her voice trembling. Ultima chuckled. Oh, but where's the fun in that? She grabbed the woman's chin, forcing her to look up. You see, I don't just kill for food. I kill because I enjoy it. Watching the light fade from your eyes, feeling the way your body twitches in its final moments. It's beautiful. The woman's sobs turned to gasps as Ultima traced a clawed finger down her throat, applying just enough pressure to draw more blood. Shush, shush, don't cry. It'll all be over soon. Carrera, now finished with her meal, licked the blood from her lips and stretched. Ultima, don't take too long. We should get back soon. Ultima sighed dramatically. Fine, fine. I'll wrap this up. Without warning, she grabbed the woman's head and, in one swift motion, bit down. The crunch of bone and the wet squelch of flesh echoed in the alley as Ultima devoured her prey's head whole. Blood splattered across the ground as the body twitched violently before going limp. Ultima swallowed, licking her lips with satisfaction. Delicious. Carrera snorted. You're so messy, and you're so impatient, Ultima shot back playfully, finishing the rest of the woman's body in a few bites. With their hunger satisfied, the two of them stepped out of the alley, wiping away any lingering traces of blood. The city continued on as if nothing had happened, unaware that two deadly predators had just feasted in its shadows. Carrera glanced at Ultima. So, back to base? Ultima stretched, letting out a pleased sigh. Yeah, let's go. I wonder if Ito will have more fun missions for us soon. With that, the two ghouls vanished into the night, their appetites sated, but their thirst for blood far from quenched.